Okay, so now we're going to look at a concept of the average gradient. That's the one thing you're going to take away today, and then we're going to compare this with something else. Now the average gradient, guys, I'm going to speak of this in terms of what we call regular math. Not really a challenge, something you already know. Can anybody tell me what is the formula for the gradient of a curve? Change in y over change in x. That's the gradient of a curve. Similarly, this could say it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's the gradient. Now, guys, when we talk about the average gradient, look, when we speak about your average performance, if I give you a curve and we say, okay, this is your maths marks, right? On average, before we go to the average, what's actually happening with your maths marks here? It's fluctuating. It's going up and coming down. So you know, here was a bad time. There you got some exposure and inspiration and motivational speech and then decided to improve. Here you got a girlfriend and then like everything went downwards again. Distracted. Okay. But overall, from that time to this time, what has happened?
It went up and down.
It went up and down, but what? The general trend here is if I draw a trend line, what is happening? Right? Your marks actually improved. Right? So what if we had a case like this? What's happening here with the outcome? You started out very high, but you may have ended quite low. Okay. So guys, when we talk about the average gradient, I'm going to tell you something now. The average gradient is the gradient you already know. The average gradient is the gradient you already know. It's just y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You also know this as the gradient of what? The gradient of what type of curve? A straight line. Now, if I ask you what's the gradient of this curve between that point and this point over here, then I'm asking you what's the average gradient. I'm asking you what is the general trend. How does things look? Does it look positive? Is it upwards? Or does it look negative? That's what I'm asking. Are you with me? So we now define the average gradient as the following. The average gradient, write this down. The average gradient of f of x. Now what is f of x? It is a
function.
Right? It's an arbitrary function, so I'm defining it in general. Okay? Of f of x, right, is, let's make it specific, between x1 and y1 and x2 and y2 is the gradient of the straight line joining x1 y1 and x2 and y2. Okay, so we good people. Now I'm going to give you a curve, right? And I'm not going to do it graphically, but I'm going to give you a function. I'm going to say find the average gradient of this curve of f of x equals x squared plus 2 between x equals 1 and x equals 4. Are you guys with me? Are you guys with me? Okay. So now, do you agree with me to find a gradient? A gradient is a slope. You need how many points based on this formula? You need 4 coordinates, but you need how many points? 2 points, because one point is one x and one y, and another point is another x and another y. So my question to you is, how many points do you need to define a slope? You need 2 points. Now, and 4 coordinates. At this point in time, I have 2 coordinates, so I need to find the corresponding coordinates. So for x equals 1, it's going to be 1 on x, and we need to figure out what's going to be on y. And for x equals 4, it's 4 on x. How do you find the y value here?
We need to use a function.
Right, so you put 1 in the function. If I put 1 in x, I get 1 squared plus 2. So that's going to give me what? 3. And over here? 18. Right. Now, as you know, the gradient is equal to what? M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And what we are particularly interested in here is, let's label this. I'm going to call this x1, y1, and I'm going to call this what? x2 and y2. Now remember, you can't have x1 here and y1 here. They need to be a set. So this is the set of points, or 1 point corresponding to those coordinates, right? Okay. Now, let's substitute in that. I'm going to put in the y values, the 2's first here. And it doesn't matter if you made this the 2's, but you just have to maintain the same orders. So we could have said, yes. Okay, and yeah, I'm dealing with the average gradient of this curve between those 2 points. So it's 18 minus 3 divided by, quickly?
Divided by 4 minus 1.
Right. And that gives you what? 18 minus 3 is 15, and 4 minus 3 is 4 minus 1 is 3, so 15 over 3 is equal to 5. And this is 5 over 1. So for every 1 unit that you are running, or that you displace horizontally, you end up displacing the y value by 5. It means that's your slope, that's your steepness. Okay.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, so this is the average gradient. Now again, this is a regular mathematics problem. We are interested in some calculus, are we not? Okay. So again, regular maths problem, nothing particularly interesting here, very, very easy. There, average gradient, you guys have a full worksheet on the average gradient to go and complete, right? Is there any more I need to teach you about the average gradient? No, just find the points, substitute into the normal formula, because you're simply finding the gradient of a straight line. And the average gradient is the gradient of the straight line that joins those 2 points on that curve. Now from this, can you tell me this gradient is what? Positive or negative? This is positive, right? And because this is positive, this means that the overall trend for that graph is upwards. It's getting greater between those 2 points, between x equals 1 and x equals 4. Now, would you like to see what this graph looks like? Yes or no? Okay, how does this work? Y equals x squared plus 2. There we go. Do you see that graph? And we were interested in the points 1 and 4. But x on the 1. So x on the 1 here. Do you see that? That's x equals 1, and this will be x equals 4. Okay? And so for every 1 unit that you run, you have to raise 5 units. Okay? Because that's what our curve was. And if we have to draw a line to join that, you can see clearly it has generally an upward trend between those 2 points, isn't it? Okay, so we've already looked at that now. We've seen the curve. We can see between 1, x equals 1 and x equals 4, there's generally upward trend, right? So that's something we've already addressed. Okay, that concludes average gradient. Now we're going to start looking at the calculus issue of all of this, and I'm going to give you a few examples to work through in terms of average gradient.